Hey, ladies and gentlemen, this is Carmine Sabia for Explain America. And revenge, it's a dish best served cold. And this is going to be stone cold. Before we get started, please make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. Those little things really help us out, and they help our channel continue to grow. And if you're not watching us on YouTube, please visit that address in the lower right-hand corner. It's youtube.com/@explainamerica. And when you get there, please hit subscribe absolutely free. It really helps us out. Trump's pick for Attorney General will probably be the most consequential pick outside of J.D. Vance that he makes. It will set the tone for this administration. And payback for the people who have used lawfare against this man, have persecuted him, his family, Steve Bannon, Peter Navarro, the January 6th protesters who've been sitting in a jail cell without a trial for years. Payback's coming for them, and they know it. And you could hear the panic. You could hear the fear in their voices. They never thought Donald Trump would be here in this spot. They never thought you and I would put him back in the White House. They misjudged us. They really believed that we were going to believe all the nonsense they say about this man. That we were going to believe all these terrible things about him that we haven't seen with our own eyes. All we've seen is a strong leader, a smart leader, somebody who gets results, a man with a giant big heart, who, if you knew the stories from before he was president, like I do, because I was born and raised in New Jersey, of this man's generosity and kindness, if you knew people that worked for him like I do, and you heard about his kindness and how much he really, really identifies more with the working man than he does with his rich friends, like there's so much about him that people, they're being lied to about this man. Well, we put him back. And now who's going to be that attorney general pick that's going to get retribution? I want you to hear the panic in this news anchor's voice, and then let me know what you think in the comments.
We have heard little from Donald Trump since his decisive win last Tuesday. So what actually is happening behind the scenes at Mar-a-Lago as the president-elect and his team plan to wield their power in the second term? And who better to give us some fresh insight into Trump's mindset than New York Times senior political correspondent and CNN analyst Maggie Haberman. Maggie, thanks so much for joining me this morning. You and your colleagues wrote that Trump's doing what he tends to do. He calls around to friends and associates, asks them who he thinks they should pick for his administration. So what are you hearing, Maggie, about what Trump's most interested in and what he's focused on as he's looking to fill out his cabinet?
Yeah, so Manu, I want to caveat this, as we did in that piece, that all of this is heavily asterisked right now. There are lists going around. There are people floating names. Trump is soliciting names. He's suggesting names that he's considering to people. None of this is real until he actually says what he's going to do. And it's notable that he started out by eliminating people with a Saturday Night Truth post about Mike Pompeo and Nikki Haley. He's most interested in a handful of cabinet posts, and that's been the case the whole time. He was not interested in most of his cabinet during his term. He's interested in the Attorney General, the Secretary of Defense, the CIA Director, and he is interested in the Secretary of Homeland Security because that's the piece that deals heavily with immigration, and that is something that he's campaigned on aggressively. What those posts end up looking like really remains to be seen. What we have heard is that there is not a ton of consensus around who could fill any of those spots right now. And unlike what we saw when he was coming in as new president in 2017, there are not a bunch of big names from, established Washington or, prominent companies like Rex Tillerson, the head of ExxonMobil, who became the Secretary of State. This is much more people who are coming from Congress or people who are coming from the states or who are known to Trump. And we'll see what that ends up looking like. They are aware that they have a Senate majority now that makes it easier to get a bunch of people confirmed. But it's still, there's the possibility of losing a bunch of Republican votes if Trump nominates controversial people.
Obviously, you mentioned Attorney General. That clearly is going to be a key thing that he's considering here. One, who do you have who do you think is actually his front runner? Do we know who his front runner could be? And two, he talks so much about retaliation against his political enemies on the campaign trail. Is that a real consideration as he weighs his attorney general pick?
Look, I don't think that there is a clear frontrunner right now, Manu. There are a bunch of overlapping camps around Trump right now, and they all have to sort of align on a consensus in order for him to go ahead with somebody. There's a bunch of names that you've put up there. I think some are more real than others, but whether those people end up being the person is anybody's guess. Is he serious about retribution? He's been talking about retribution or revenge pretty consistently over the last 2 years, but certainly most of his life. So yes, I expect that will be a thing. You talked earlier in the show about his desire for loyalty, which we heard him ask a number of people about when he was in office previously. That will be the case this time. The constraints on him in terms of what he needs for loyalty, Manu, are a little different because the Supreme Court ruling about presidential immunity for official acts gives him a lot more latitude to do things that people would have stopped him from doing the last time he was president. But he still wants somebody who is going to be basically an extension of him, which Jeff Sessions was just not. Jeff Sessions honored the post-Watergate norm of judicial Justice Department independence. Bill Barr was more in lockstep with Trump in terms of how he viewed the world, but there were things he wouldn't do either. So we'll see what this looks like.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Supreme Court decision on immunity, which gives him a wider latitude potentially to take decisions that may not lead to some legal jeopardy for him. So how do you expect his second term to be different from the first?
Look, it's so speculative that because we're dealing with a person who is serving one term, who has, again, complete control over, or one-party control over Congress and the Senate and the White House. And that's what he went in with last time, but not a whole lot got done because of various things. I think you are going to see him try to get a bunch of things done, particularly on the personnel side, in the first 6 months. I do think he will impose tariffs, although of what size we don't know. I do think that he will try to take an immigration enforcement action within the first 6 months. I think he will try to get most of what he wants to do done in the first 6 months. I know there is this theory that he's just bluffing or he's using language or he's going to, he's negotiating, and sometimes that's true. One of the things that tends to be a bulwark against what he wants to do is press coverage. I understand that his campaign has very effectively used podcasts and non-mainstream media to sell his message. Trump is still, he is an almost 80-year-old man who does care about legacy media and headlines he sees and cable coverage he sees. We'll see how he reacts to it as he goes in, because that's what happened last time.
We shall see how much different it is. Maggie Haberman, thank you so much for sharing, of course, your expertise. We really appreciate it this morning.